This video was made in association with KnifeInformer.com. Head on over to Knife Informer for all of your blade-related needs, including reviews, comparisons, stats, and more. What is up, everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the ever-coveted Grimsmo Rask. Now, I think I might be the first person who is about to give what might be a majority negative review of the Rask, which is a little bit unfounded, a little bit unfair. Let's kind of just jump into it. This knife is on loan to us from my friend John, who was kind enough to not only send along his Rask, for goodness sake, but also this beautiful Clyde Challenor Talon and Brian Nadeau Mini Typhoon. Big thanks to John. I really appreciate him sending out these knives. Now, real quick before I jump in, I just want to give you guys a good look at this bronze anodized finish. Obviously, I'm not a fan of bronze, but that doesn't mean you aren't. And I did wipe this down a little bit because you can see on the reverse side, it's super prone to kind of like being de-shaded by fingerprints and finger oils. So I just wanted to give you a quick look at that Grimsmo anodizing that Eric does. It's really nice finish. And of course, as soon as I touch it, you can see it becomes like a gray color. It's kind of interesting. So I just wanted to show that off. Let's get a quick size comparison going for you guys. I know not everybody has gotten to handle a Rask. So let's see what we're working with here. I don't know if you guys have noticed the rust on my PM2 yet. I know I need to take care of that. It kind of came out of nowhere, honestly. It's never rusted before. All right. So you can see that in terms of length, we are a lot closer to the PM2, but the Rask, even though the PM2 is quite a thin knife for its size, quite frankly, the Rask is even thinner. So overall, it's going to feel like a much smaller package than the PM2, especially in your pocket and closed in your hand, but it is going to give you, I'd say, even more useful cutting edge than a PM2 would by really a large margin. So ultimately, it's going to be pretty great in terms of size, general EDC carry. If you can carry a blade that's over 3 inches legally, then the Rask is going to be... This thing is rusting too. The Rask is going to be a really good fit for anybody that's able to carry a blade over 3 inches. Actually, I don't even know how much this blade, how big it is. So 3.75. If you can carry a bigger blade, this is going to be a sweet overall kind of EDC size for you. So let's check out the weight real quick while we're at it. All right. Just throw that down. Yeah, only 3.2 ounces, guys. Definitely falling below that 3.5 to 4.5 range. Pretty light knife. Obviously, the Norseman internal milling is going to be pretty extensive. I will show you a photo of that now. And yeah, that's what it looks like on the inside. Pretty sweet. Obviously, CNC work is going to be one of the best things that the Norseman brothers, the Grimsmo brothers, are known for on both the Norseman and the Rask. They're only two models to date. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar, but quick little background. The Rask was a more traditionally shaped option, which the Grimsmo brothers started offering. I guess they started offering pre-orders in, 2014, like right around the time the Norseman was coming out. And so, they did the Norseman, which I'd done a video on the channel before of, and that knife was pretty abnormally shaped, especially for a lot of sort of general EDC users. And so the response to that and I think that was a good thing to kind of have something that was out of the ordinary to really get their name out there and start. But it was smart of them to quickly sort of walk back a bit and make their second model much more standard in terms of size and shape and usability and everything like that, which is really sweet. I'm glad that they were able to offer it. So let's go ahead and jump into the features and flaws. Let me talk about a couple little things real quick. The clip actually functions super well. It's got quite a bit of tension to it, but you can see they did the nub thing, which I tend to complain about. You guys might remember, or if I've even posted this video yet, but there's a nub on the Talon which doesn't function super well. But you can see here that the nub is also met with this section here, which does a good job of kind of getting the clip up and around the seam of your pants so that the nub is kind of introduced to the seam with a little bit more guidance. This is kind of holding the seam down for the nub to ramp over, as opposed to the nub pushing into the seam and the seam becoming bunched up and therefore thicker and therefore more difficult to overcome. So overall, the shape of the clip going to be designed very well. I do like how the edge is kind of shaped and contoured to the edge of the frame as well. The brothers hired a third person who's actually doing this on the Rasks. When they first started producing Rasks, this sort of contouring along the edge here, I believe, did not exist. It was more of like a flat, hard edge, or maybe just like a flat 95-degree chamfer. I'm not quite sure, but I do know that this was introduced when they got their third employee. Very nice touch. Feels really good. You can roll your finger across it and everything like that. So that's pretty sweet. In terms of ergonomics, the knife really speaks for itself. And let me take a moment there and say that if you really want to know what this knife is like from a user EDC kind of perspective, go check out Nick Shabazz's video, because he's going to do a better job of sort of explaining how this is going to be a utilitarian knife. But the ergonomics pretty solid. You really can't go wrong with such a simple shape like this. No jimping on the blade spine here makes it quite slippery. And of course you do have the sort of rounding done to the edges of the flipper tab as well, which is similar on the Norseman. I will say the Norseman gives you a little bit more traction. I do feel like I'm slipping and sliding and rolling around this tab a little bit more than I was on the Norseman, and that might just be because the Norseman was easier to grip with these fingers, and so I didn't feel like it was such an overall kind of difficult thing. But the flipper tabs are pretty similar on both knives, so I don't know why I have such a harder time with the Rask here. But that kind of brings me to my next point, which is kind of a big problem with this knife. And it's something that until earlier today, I thought I was kind of the only person who dealt with this. So as I've mentioned on the channel before, guys, I have really like sweaty hands, especially when I do these videos, because I have all these lights on and the room gets really hot because I can't run the fan, because then you can't hear me talk. But I have sweaty hands like normally, and that's just the way that I am, and so I already have trouble with knives that kind of have slippery finishes, and so the Rask is super slippery to the point where like I can't own this. I can like barely manipulate this knife in my hand without dropping it. It is just so freaking slick, and that's even with this really nice diamond pattern, which I would think is supposed to add some sort of friction. It doesn't. It's very it's very shallow, so even though you can see it, you can't really feel it as much. It's still an incredibly smooth surface, and it's this really high polished titanium, and it's just super slippery. And the knife overall is very thin, kind of thin on like the scale of like a Benchmade 940 almost. I think it's a little bit thicker than a 940, but you know, kind of on that scale, and it just makes the knife super slippery. And so again, I thought that was kind of like a problem that I had with it, and I wasn't really going to dwell too much on it in the video, because I know that like a lot of knife guys have tougher hands and hands that are dry. Sorry if you can hear my dogs barking in the background. But I actually brought this knife to hang out with a couple of friends today, and they both right away were like, this thing is really slippery. And one of those friends, Brian, he works in like construction and stuff, and he, you know, made a point to say, like, I don't get wet hands. Like, I don't know what's going on. He said as soon as he touched the knife, it felt like he had, like, lotion on all of a sudden, and that he struggled to hold the knife. So I'd be interested to hear from other Rask owners if they have similar feelings about sort of the slipperiness of the knife. But, guys, I frankly can barely freaking hold on to this thing. It is like holding... It feels like the whole thing's covered in lotion, and it's just so slippery. So that's a big negative for me in terms of, you know, being able to like own, carry, and use the thing. So if that's not a problem for you, then by all means, it's a sick knife and everything. But I don't know, guys, that might be something to consider. Definitely super slippery. Now, the final thing to really talk about with this one is, of course, going to be the action. This particular knife, I did talk to John about it a bit. He got it about 6 months ago from the Brothers Direct. And I have to say, the knife is slightly off-center to begin with. Not by much, and it's hard to see, but I assure you it is. And the action is not quite up to par with some other Rasks that I felt. So if you guys remember from the Norseman video, I'm really into the whole thing where the knives close against gravity, where you can hold the handle at a 45-degree angle and the blade will actually swing up into the frame. This is something that my Norseman accomplished. There have been plenty of knives that I've seen that have accomplished this, and I've seen that accomplished on every other Rask I've seen. So whether it's a Rask that belongs to a friend and I've seen it on video, or one of the 2 Rasks that I actually handled at Blade Show, they all do that. Every Grimsmo knife, whether it's a Norseman or a Rask that I've ever handled, does that, and this one doesn't. And I disassembled it. I cleaned everything. I didn't know if John kind of used it a lot, maybe hadn't gotten maintained in a while, so I made sure, and I got proper oil on all the surfaces, proper cleaning on all the surfaces, and even though it's still super smooth, like, look, it's still crazy drop shot action, right? It's still really, really good compared to something else. Sorry about my dogs. But it's more like a Shiro, it's just, you guys can see for yourself. It's not quite closing all the way. It just feels like you can hear it too. The detent is really, it sounds dry, but it's not. I've got 85 weight nano oil on there, and it's not dry at all. Like, I could open it up and show you, and there's oil in there, and plenty of it. Not too much, right? Because too much can have a worse effect than no oil at all. But yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's just not quite perfect. So that's pretty much it, guys. Like I said, maybe the first not super positive review of the Norseman. I have to reiterate, though, that if you've been following the channel, I'm a super big snob, and I'm like really picky. It doesn't take much to set me off. So if you're like used to like production knives and stuff, like, this is still going to be super sick. And if this is your grail, by all means, you should be chasing it. It is still 100% like an amazing, awesome, super duper custom knife, but it isn't quite the hype train thing that it should be, with all the crazy secondary market prices and stuff. It's just another knife, guys. It's just another knife. So while it's a really, really great knife and it's worth maker's price, I think, the CNC work that these guys do is almost second to none. It's really incredible, the machine work these guys do. I am super, super appreciative of it. And the fact that they make everything in-house all the way down to the screws is really impressive. And it's an honor to own any Grimsmo knife, and they are amazing knives. But don't get it twisted that it's, on par with some of the greatest knives in the world. Because it's just a frame lock flipper, So thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. If you would like to see pictures of all these beautiful knives, including this Rask, you can do so by following me on Instagram at tovarishworks. And of course, if you'd like to reach out, you can shoot me an email at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Big thanks again to John for sending along these 3 knives. I super, super duper appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.